Alright, so welcome everyone, and for the continuation of the previous lesson, here in this lesson we would like to take care of the important parameters of the fluid node because there are something which I'm not, like at present I'm not liking that stuff. If I'm gonna play the timeline, you might could see that the reaction is no doubt taking place and the colors and the opacity, everything is going fine, but the look and feel is not like that much, interesting because I just found that the streak should go pretty straight in the beginning, and after that it should start taking some nice shapes in terms of the vorticity of the swirl. So how are we going to address that? It's quite simple. We just need to key down certain attributes. So before we proceed, we would like to switch on the fluid node. Let's say I'm going to go to display and bring it back from none to the bounding box so that it would be easier for me to select that one. And first of all, we would like to go back again and keep it to the disable evaluation mode. The most important parameter would be the thrill. Okay, if I wanna put that thing to the one, let's say we put a key, and let's say at least for, all right, so we also need to put the particle as well because they're also rising up. So if you're gonna select the particles and just make them disable or is dynamic off. All right. So if we're gonna scrub the timeline, there isn't anything. That's fine. Now we're gonna select the fluid node, and here you could see the swirl. I've already keyed one at frame zero from 0 to, let us say, 30 frames. I like to key that up to the one, and let's say from 30 to 45 maximum. We'll put that thing to the 6. Okay, and now we'll start observing what change we could get. And along with that also, let's key the noise 0, and from 0 to 30 we'll keep it again a key. From 30 to 45 we'll like to give it 0.15 value. I generally prefer that the noise should be really very less because if you're gonna crank up the values, could make the fluids a little bit more, uh, the fluid may could lost their stability. So I guess zero point 0.1 should be more than enough for that. So we're gonna put the key, and now it's time to bring it back to the disable evaluation mode and select the particle shape node and bring back to the is dynamics. There are a couple of changes we need to do in the emitter for the particles. First of all, I need to crank up the resolution. Like the rate particles is only 200,000. We could take that thing further to the 400,000. Okay, and one important thing is that the distance and the direction attributes is pretty less. Like let's say the min distance and the max distance isn't like that much great. So once you're gonna put it to 0.25 and bring it back to zero point 0.5, which is the max distance, so the particles would like to come up here or burst out at the range of 0.25 to zero point 0.5 from the surface of the sword. So obviously the visibility of the particles in the beginning would be much higher as compared to the previous one. We are not touching any values of speed and the normal speed. Let them be 1 and 1 because we are already using the conserve value to be really very zero point 0.1 is like that much very slow value. I don't think so that the velocity will going to add any of the effect to the existing particles. So it has to take everything from the velocity field from the fluid dynamic system. So now let's play the timeline, and there should be some change. What I should expect is that the thing should go pretty much straight in the beginning, and after that it should start showing some nice changes, and I think so it is really going according to my own expectations. You can just see it in the beginning part, and here's the magic's taking place. So if we just compare these two different results, the one that I showed you in the beginning and the one that I'm showing you now, this would going to add much more essence and much more value to the subject. This is, I should say, a kind of a real magic effect instead the one that I showed you before, because the reaction must have to be pretty much straight in the beginning, okay, and then it has to catch up with some more effects. We also could add a little bit more drama, or you could say more weightage to the subject by, again, first we need to disable them up, and we need to disable the evaluation again. What I thought, I would like to leave that thing upon you because that is my thought basically. uh, you may could add some more sense to it. Let's say we're gonna reduce the buoyancy to minus 15 in the beginning so that the reaction should go downward, let's say from 0 to 15 frames. Okay, then from 15 to the 45 frames, it's gonna pick up with the pace. So that would also going to be pretty much interesting. Okay, so we're gonna bring back from the disable evaluation mode and selecting the particles, bringing them back. Now you should see some more interesting changes. Now the case would be the energy will be going downwards in the beginning, and then it'll gonna take a comeback in a very different way. So I also gonna like that stuff also. But again, I must have to say it completely depends up to you in what way you would like to add up. So you may could ignore this, particular change. You may could gonna stick to the one that I told you just a moment ago. That is playing with the shrill attribute, uh, keeping it to the 1 for 0 to 30 frames, and then after that increasing to, because with this effect you're going to find something interesting over here as well. So more volume and more effect could be gathered because the fluids are just coming back from a burst. So I must have to say that this, the choice is completely up to you. What we can do it is that, since they are going down pretty much, so we could adjust some few values. Instead of minus 15, let's say we're going to keep it to minus 10, and we should reduce the gap from, let's say we're going to put that thing to 30 only instead of this, so that there shouldn't be like that the particles are moving downward for longer frames of the time, and then they are collecting energy to come back again. So I think this would be quite an interesting thing that would be adding a little bit more exaggerations to the energy effect. Okay, so I guess that was just all about the change I would be expecting in our rising particle reaction. And one more thing I would like to say is that we still haven't talked about anything regarding the look and feel of the particles. So I would be taking care of that in a separate lesson. I don't want to disturb the flow of learning by taking you inside the change in the particle setup. That is obviously, if I'm going to select that up, I would be taking care of the software render particles, and I would be going for the tube. But at this moment, I am not going to do that thing. We would be talking of the look and feel in our upcoming lesson. And don't go too close to my sword. Stay back. All right. And you're going to go for, you know, streak kind of particles, because in the tube rendering system, we would be sticking to them. And you could play with the tail size, that's your wish, but that won't be like in this way you can get this kind of beautiful things, a kind of a stretchy and streaky kind of an effect. But here for now, like to stick to the point type. Okay, that is also great. So I guess that was just all about this reaction. You did play with some values. I would also like to encourage you to go and keep a change to the density tension. Instead of 0.5, you may go to the 0.2, and you may also crank up the value of the gradient force to, let's say, 60. And again, you can play the timeline. You should also notice that the particle count is also rising, and they're reaching approximately half of the million, which is not like that much great and that much, large particle count as compared to the current versions of the Maya. But I highly have to appreciate that the viewport 2.0 is really has did a nice job, because supporting half of the million particles and still keeping the viewport very live, very live and very active. It isn't like that much great in the earlier versions of the Maya. So I guess our job is completely done, and I'm really gonna like the motion and the behavior of the particles, that they are catching up with the sword. So this is all done, and we are just left with the shading particles. So we will be dealing that up in the upcoming lessons. All right, so we're gonna jump up to the next lesson and start working out on our next reaction.